On an isolated island, a group of hunters struggles to fend off massive, monstrous ants. Their leader boldly charges forward, determined to hold the line and forbidding any retreat. But things quickly go south, the hunters are overwhelmed, and their leader starts losing consciousness as one of the ants feasts on his innards. It looks like all hope is lost until, out of nowhere, a man with incredibly strong healing abilities swoops in and saves the leader just in time. The leader panics as the healer faces danger himself, but he's swiftly rescued by another individual, a total powerhouse. This new arrival annihilates the monstrous ants with ease, leaving the initial group stunned. It becomes clear they were mere side characters all along. The rescuers are no ordinary fighters, they're elite, top-tier hunters of the highest rank. Effortlessly, they eliminate the red ants. Just when it seems safe, an enormous pale ant appears, radiating a menacing aura. The elite hunters leap into action, leaving the wounded leader in the healer's care. Working as a team, they tear apart the albino ant, ripping off its face and arms. The strongest fighter uses one of the severed limbs as a weapon to obliterate the creature entirely. But before they can celebrate, an entire army of pale ants swarms the area. Still, the elite hunters remain undeterred. One of them, a lightning-wielding mage, powers up for a devastating attack, while the brute of the group unleashes his strength, shredding his clothes as his muscles bulge. Their fight is so intense it can be seen from the nearby city. Meanwhile, a man named Choi watches from the city and breathes a sigh of relief, knowing the hunters arrived in time. But he's got his own problems. Ants have invaded the city too. Choi shows off his fiery abilities, burning the invaders to ash, leaving only the pale ants behind. He's not alone. A squad of exterminators assists him in wiping out the threat. We then learn about the world's situation. 10 years ago, mysterious portals connecting to another dimension appeared across the globe. These portals brought monsters into the world, and only individuals with unique abilities, known as hunters, could fight them. Hunters are ranked from E to S, with S being the most powerful. However, once their abilities awaken, they're locked in place, unable to grow stronger no matter how much they train. 3 years later, a construction site has transformed into a dungeon raid location. A man is grabbing a quick drink before heading into the raid. His friend is surprised to see him, having heard he quit being a hunter. The man explains that he had, but financial troubles forced him back into the field, especially with a second child on the way. Desperate for cash, he's returned to dungeon raids. Enter our protagonist, Jin-Ho. He recently joined the raid group but is already infamous as the weakest hunter alive. As he arrives, Park, the man mentioned earlier, mistakes him for someone strong, given how well known he is. But no, Jin-Ho's reputation comes from his utter lack of skill. He's so weak, he once got hospitalized during a raid in a low-level dungeon. People joke he deserves his own F rank below E. Despite the ridicule, Jin-Ho takes it in stride. His reputation as the weakest makes him a magnet for safe, easy dungeon raids, perfect for someone just trying to scrape by. Jin-Ho overhears the harsh comments but can't argue because they are true. A woman named Ji recognizes Jin-Ho and scolds him for his most recent injuries, clearly worried. Jin-Ho admits, embarrassed, that he hurt himself in a dungeon so low level the team didn't even bring a healer, assuming no one could possibly get injured there. Ji gets mad on his behalf, but Jin-Ho blames himself, knowing his weakness is the problem. The raid begins, and Chio volunteers as the group's leader. No one objects, and the team heads into the dungeon. Jin-Ho is reminded to stick close to the group for safety. Armed with nothing more than a basic, low-powered knife, because that's all he can afford, he steels himself to give it his best shot. Elsewhere, the president of the Hunters Association, Juki, concludes a meeting with the government. The discussion revolves around preventing the dungeon breaks, catastrophic events where monsters escape from portals into the world. The government demands a share of the loot from dungeon raids, including valuable items like magic crystals. These crystals, known as magic gems, are a primary source of income for the association. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Ho finally manages to obtain a magic gem. He's ecstatic about his rare stroke of luck, but before he can celebrate, he's attacked by a goblin, forcing him to defend himself. When Jin-Ho confronts the goblin, his weapon shatters into fragments. Before he can react, the goblin lands a blow, stabbing him. Jin-Ho stands frozen, screaming in pain, unable to fight back. Thankfully, the large man from earlier charges past the helpless healer and rescues Jin-Ho. While the healer tends to his wounds, Jin-Ho watches as the rest of the team fights on without him. Later, it's revealed that magical gems, obtained from high-ranking creatures, can be crafted into weapons potent enough to face even stronger foes. Crystals from dungeons can also be weaponized, though they're far less effective than these gems. The government sees potential in these resources as a revolutionary energy source. It's clean, efficient, and far less harmful to the environment, making it an ideal alternative to conventional energy forms. Researchers are racing to figure out how to harness electricity from the gems and crystals. Because these resources are only found in dungeons, hunters are becoming highly sought after. Meanwhile, back in the dungeon, the team celebrates their victory over the boss. Jin-Ho, however, is still recovering, ashamed of his performance. One of his teammates wonders aloud why he became a hunter at all, given how often he's injured. She worries about his future and fears he's bound to meet a grim fate. Jin-Ho apologizes, but it doesn't alleviate her concerns. As the group divides the loot, it becomes apparent that there weren't many crystals, leaving the payout disappointingly small. Jin-Ho feels disheartened, staring at the low-tier gem he received. He questions whether risking his life is worth it. Their conversation is interrupted when someone notices a massive hole nearby. The group gathers to investigate, realizing it's a rare double dungeon, a dungeon within a dungeon. They confirm this when the main dungeon fails to close after the boss is defeated. This second dungeon likely holds untapped treasures, luring the group deeper. Song-Shell suggests following protocol and reporting the discovery to the association, but others argue against it. Reporting it would mean forfeiting any claim to the potential rewards. Park, desperate to earn more money for his family, advocates for pressing on, despite the risks. The group debates, splitting evenly between those wanting to explore and those wanting to leave. The tie-breaking vote falls to Jin-Ho. Despite knowing the dangers, Jin-Ho feels cornered. His father is missing, his mother is hospitalized, and his sister's education depends on him. With no other source of income, he decides to proceed, knowing it might be his only chance to earn enough to keep his family afloat. Elsewhere, at a magical testing facility, prospective hunters await evaluation. Recruitment teams are prepared to enlist anyone with potential, regardless of age or gender. Among them, Choi, a high-ranking hunter, encourages his team to find promising candidates. In the bustling city, a bold young woman effortlessly thwarts some thieves trying to steal a purse. She retrieves it without hesitation, brushing off the encounter as if it were routine. The woman, Chari, is a renowned S-rank hunter and a household name. Despite her fame, she struggles with the overwhelming attention from fans, often making dramatic escapes to avoid the spotlight. Back in the dungeon, Jin-Ho and his team have been exploring the second area for 40 minutes, but have yet to find anything valuable. With the dungeon portal set to close in an hour, they only have 20 minutes left. Jin-Ho apologizes to his teammate Ji for voting to explore, but she's more upset about his recklessness. If the goblin strike had been slightly higher, he could have died. She chastises him for not valuing his life more, and reminds him that the only reason he's alive is thanks to the team's healer. To lighten the mood, Ji jokingly suggests he buy her a meal to make up for it. Jin-Ho, caught off guard, hesitates, but before they can continue, the team stumbles upon a massive door, the boss room of the second dungeon. Its imposing size raises suspicion. Something isn't right, but Kim insists they can't leave empty-handed and pushes forward, dragging the others with him. Elsewhere in the city, a group of new hunters attends an orientation where they watch a briefing video. It explains that dungeon portals have been appearing for over a decade, yet many aspects of them remain a mystery. Even for the most skilled hunters, delving into a dungeon is a high-stakes gamble where survival depends on extreme vigilance. Overconfidence often leads to death, yet, this particular team, exploring an uncharted section of the dungeon, seems to disregard such caution, strolling into a mysterious chamber as if it were some sort of thrilling adventure. The room they enter feels ancient, with towering statues that appear to be centuries old. Jin-Ho can't help but focus on the most imposing statue, while Ji grows increasingly uneasy in the oppressive silence. There's no sign of a boss monster, which only adds to the group's discomfort. Song-Shell notices what looks like a magical formation engraved on the floor, but his attention quickly shifts to a stone tablet covered in archaic symbols. It appears to dictate commandments about revering some unknown deity. Ji, meanwhile, swears she saw the massive statue's eyes shift slightly, almost as if it were observing them. Jin-Ho dismisses her fears, believing she's just on edge. However, everyone's nerves are pushed to their limits when the chamber's entrance slams shut without warning. One member of the team, already reluctant to venture into the room, senses the danger and tries to make a run for it. But before he can even take a step, one of the smaller statues springs to life, slicing him in half with terrifying precision. Panic spreads like wildfire among the group. Not only did someone die in an instant, but the sheer speed and power of the attack leave them paralyzed in fear. Jin-Ho, frozen, looks back at the central statue, praying it remains motionless. To his horror, its eyes slowly lock onto his. A flood of memories rushes through Jin-Woo's mind. He's faced death countless times during his missions. On his very first raid, he was separated from his group and nearly killed. Another time, he was trapped in a labyrinth for days, barely surviving on scraps. He's even been hospitalized for weeks after a minor encounter with a weak magical creature. No matter how insignificant the dungeon, the danger to him is always real. Unlike most hunters who can afford quality gear, Jin-Woo scrapes by with a flimsy, worn-out dagger. If that blade were to fail him during a fight, he'd have no choice but to rely on his bare hands. His tattered clothes, full of holes, only add to the ridicule he endures from his peers. Yet, despite the odds stacked against him, he has no choice but to continue this perilous job to make ends meet. In the present, Jin-Woo can feel the menacing aura radiating from the giant statue, but he doesn't have time to warn the others. Suddenly, the statue unleashes a blinding energy blast from its eyes, causing utter chaos. The group is thrown into disarray, unable to comprehend what's happening. Ji is trembling, barely able to keep her composure, while Jin-Woo stands in stunned silence, questioning how things escalated so quickly. Trapped with no escape and facing certain doom, Jin-Woo reflects on the grim reality of his life. Even if he survives this ordeal, he knows his luck will eventually run out.